So, welcome. PrintCity is an alliance of about 20 companies working together with a number of other industry associations, and our idea is to better understand what's happening in a holistic sense in certain areas. And we've developed a strategy which says that, first of all, print has to be seen. It has to be visible and appreciated as a media. But at the same time, if we want print media to prosper, we should also look at lean and green. And our conclusion is that lean and green should always be looked at together, because in probably more than 80% of the time, whenever you get an environmental benefit, you also get a business benefit, and vice versa. So we wanted to try and understand a little bit better how our industry has been developing since the Rio Sustainability Conference, which was 20 years ago, and 20 years ago next month. So we were able to do a case study, which is with the French Printing Industry Association, the publisher Hachette, and to look at ELLE magazine. So what we wanted to do was to look at the whole value chain, what goes from the forest through to the end to the urban forest, which is recycled paper, passing through ELLE magazine, which was, if you like, the temporary use of that forest fibre. So what happens across this value chain? Well, the magazine itself, what's changed in 20 years is it's got slimmer and it's got trimmer. Now, it's probably doesn't look very much, but that's 4% of all of the paper that's used. 4% of the ink, 4% less material to transport. So it has part of a cumulative impact on the environment and also on cost. So that has an impact on materials. Now, the other thing that's happened there, the next increment, comes from lightweighting. This is reducing the paper weight, and that saves around 7%. So we've already got a cumulative 11% from those two very small changes. Both of those changes being led by the publisher. Now, if you look at what's gone on to making to making paper, you're using a lot less water today, and we've also been able to reduce waste very significantly. Now, the thing here that you'll see which has gone up is the paper consumption, energy per copy. But you should realise that although that's gone up 3%, there's around about 15 to 20% more pages in ELLE on average in edition today than 20 years ago. So what we have then is we should have changed that figure to around about minus 15%. So we've got accumulation of things here. Now, the other key aspect in terms of materials that have changed was in 1992, there was no such thing as forest certification on a widespread scale. WWF, I think, was 94 with the FSC label, a couple of years later PEFC. So what's changed also is that today all of the paper used by ELLE magazine is manufactured from paper that is in certified forests, and that's a really a big step. Now, physically, let's come back to the magazine itself. We saw that it got a little bit smaller. One of the problems when you look at trying to do a case study is not a lot of people kept a lot of data about what happened 20 years ago in case somebody like me came along and said, I want to do a case study. You know, that's a bit of a problem. We managed to get enough to do the offset part. The gravure is a bit more difficult, but there's enough here to show us some good results. Now, the significant thing that's changed in the web offset business is presses have got larger and they've got faster. Well, here you can immediately see that what used to be 3 sections on a 32-page press is now 2 pages on a 48. The other thing that changed mildly is UV is now run on the cover, which it wasn't 20 years ago. So this is another incremental saving, is that the plates for the equivalent area, for the equivalent number of pages, you're using 7% less aluminium, which is a fairly significant saving if you looked lately at the price of aluminium. The absolutely massive impact was the elimination of films and all of the elements that went with film processing. That's both in terms of time, cost, and particularly the environment. Now, CTP has been the best lean and green thing that we've seen. It doesn't only impact pre-press, it also impacts press, because we get a much faster make-ready on printing presses, which reduces waste. But also, with modern plate processing techniques, we've reduced the amount of water that's needed by 92%, and the amount of dangerous liquids to dispose of has been reduced by 98%. Now, this is not supplier speak. This is not, this is not even best available technology. This is what is used in the printing plant today that produces ELLE magazine. We can do even better than this if we really wanted to. So what's happened then in printing? Now, here we're looking at printing technologies. So as I said before, we're producing 50% more copies per revolution, and the revolutions are 50% faster. So we're really speeding up production. At the same time, there's a whole heap of other productivity improvements that are actually, these are actual figures from the printer. So you look at the changeover time, dramatically dropped, unplanned downtime, dramatically dropped, technologies reducing waste, which is very important, that's down, and also particularly the total amount of production time has been reduced very, very much. Also the number of crewing on a press. If we go to the area of energy for the printing press, we weren't able to find any data from 20 years ago. What we can say is that we used to have these very, very heavy shafts and gearboxes going from one unit to another. Now they've all gone. It's shaftless drives, there's less inertia, there's also more competition. We're using more and more electronics, so that actually brings up the balance in the other way. But those electronics are there for automation, for closed loop control, and to reduce waste. The one thing that's absolutely clear that we can measure, because we've got the data for it, is that the gas consumption of heat set drying has dropped by about 50%. If you look at some of the figures, it can even be by 65%. Very, very simple. We used to have a dryer, we used to have an oxidizer to clean the air before you could exhaust it. What happens now is that the solvents that come out of that oxidizer are actually recycled. The calories are used to fuel the drying process. So this is a great lean and green combination in action. So let's have a look. Benefit summary. Less water, less energy, all the fibre certified. Recycling rate is being doubled. It was 35% 20 years ago. It's now 71% for magazine papers in France. Pre-press, we've already discussed that. The changeover time on press, 66% faster. Production speed down 75%. Unplanned downtime down 50%. Paper waste has dropped about 25%. Gas consumption 50% less. So they're all lean and green savings. So we get lots of greeny points in the value chain. So those are all tangible improvements. But what does it deliver to the publisher and the reader? Because we're only an intermediary, if you like. We've gone through a number of those things. What is a key aspect here? ELLE 20 years ago cost the equivalent of €2. We didn't have the euro then, but it was about that. Price hasn't changed, except that if you look at the real discounted price for inflation, the sales price has actually fallen 35%. Now you're actually getting probably 15-20% more pages. So all of the savings that have gone through this have actually been passed on from the printing and paper industry to the publisher, and he's passed most of those on to the readers. This is really interesting. We didn't expect many of the results that we see from this. It's perhaps not an absolutely total case study, but I think it's significant enough for us to say that as an industry, we've done a pretty good job in the last 20 years since Rio. And if you pursue a lean and green strategy, you will deliver to both sides of the coin. And if we really want to make a difference, we have to address both economics and the environment simultaneously and not disassociated. So that's the message from Drupa. The Lean and Green book, this is the best thing. If you're going to take one thing home with you, take it home, Lean and Green. It's in English and it's in German. And if you want to read more about the ELLE case study, there's 4 pages of it here summarized, and you can learn a lot more. This is not any company propaganda. This is essentially generic. It's done with a wide number of sources and associations that we have the great pleasure to work with. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a great Drupa. Bye.